Coming up this time on Art Rocks, cutting-edge fashions from past and present strut into the spotlight. And building a bespoke video game.
There's some sort of self-expression aspect that comes along with interactive media.
These stories up next on Art Rocks.
West Baton Rouge Museum is proud to provide local support for this program on LPB, offering diverse exhibitions throughout the year and programs that showcase art, history, music, and more. West Baton Rouge Museum, culture cultivated.
Art Rocks is made possible by the Foundation for Excellence in Louisiana Public Broadcasting and by viewers like you.
Hello, thank you for joining me for some high fashion and a real long swim on this edition of Art Rocks. I'm James Fox-Smith from Country Roads Magazine. What you're about to see are some of the most fashionable outfits ever worn by Louisiana women. They'll include clothing made for wife of one-time Louisiana Senator Russell Long and top-of-the-line designs worn by affluent and influential women around the world. Here's Michael Mamp, director of LSU's Textile and Costume Museum, to introduce the exhibit he's put together and to tell us why he chose to name it Color Me Fashion.
Color Me Fashion is inspired by the Hindu festival of Holi, which happens each spring, and is related to the universal triumph of good over evil, birth and renewal, and color is used as a manifestation of that birth and renewal, as a way for people to celebrate joy, and they spend the entire day reveling together in bright, magnificent color, with color and fashion and food and family and music. Holi is primarily practiced in India, but is also happening in other parts of the world, such as here in the United States. Color Me Fashion brings together a disparate array of objects, all arranged by color, which span a 100-year time period from about 1890 to 1990. We begin our introduction to Color Me Fashion with two evening pieces that we're calling Color Me Evening, both done in bright, vivid color, but also with beautiful decoration in the form of beading with crystals and also with other forms of beadwork. The light pale evening ensemble was worn by Catherine Long, who was the wife of longtime Louisiana Senator Russell Long, daughter-in-law of Huey Long. And the multi-paneled skirt ensemble was designed by the Italian designer Emilio Pucci for Mrs. W.S. Flanagan, who was a personal friend of the Italian designer, and he made this piece especially for her for an event that she was chairing. This peach-colored, voluminous evening gown was designed by Count Ferdinando Sarmi, who was an Italian that gained prominence as a fashion designer following World War II. First in Italy and then working for Elizabeth Arden as an in-house designer here in the United States. In the 1960s and 70s, he was a favorite among influential women and celebrities, worn frequently by Patricia Nixon during her husband's presidency. As I was thinking about this exhibition, I wanted to be able to show the public many different things that we had in our collection, and a way to bring those different items across time, space, and place together was through the magic of color. Color and fashion go hand in hand and have been used across time to celebrate some of the most important events of life, from birth to death and everything in between. So many designers, when working on their collections, begin first with developing a color palette that informs their textile choices and their trim choices as they work to create a fully realized collection. Color is a major component of their design process. We begin our exhibition here with an orange and blue color arrangement, which are complementary colors, those which are opposite each other on the color wheel, that when used in tandem increase the vibrancy and appeal of the colors and allowed us to bring together many different types of fashion pieces spanning a wide time range and styles, and yet creating a very pleasing tableau for the viewer. This blue evening gown is a treasure of our collection dating from 1990 and by the famous French couturier Lanvin, the House of Lanvin, which is still in operation today. It's a simple silhouette with a fitted bodice and long sleeves and a somewhat gathered skirt, but of course what makes it so dramatic is the use of these beautiful feathers ornamenting the neckline in shades of blue and also the white. Feather work is a common component of couture. Couture is a word that is bounced around a lot today, but it is a government-regulated process in France that you have to be a member of the Chambre syndicale de la haute couture to be a true couture house, which means that the garment is handmade, made to order, and only a few of them would have been made for very select customers. So it's very special that we have one of these couture pieces in our collection. This floral, abstract floral print gown done in a silk organza combined with chiffon was worn by a local woman in Baton Rouge by the name of Geraldine Schwing, donated by her husband Charles Schwing, and is an example of Oscar de la Renta's work from the late 1970s. We've paired it with a series of beads in copper and warm orange and have attempted to accessorize many of the looks that we're showing with accessories in colors that complement the ensemble in order to make the color presentation even more vivid. I'll mention while we're talking about this outfit that the fabric panel, which is behind the outfit, is by the Italian designer Fortuny, who became very famous in the 1920s and 30s for his fashion and textiles, and we're so grateful to have several Fortuny fabric remnants in our collection that we were able to utilize in the show. This dress, done also in blue and orange, but in a more vivid tonality of blue and orange with its scoop neckline, is another example of work by Oscar de la Renta, a Spanish designer who would go on to create a French couture business as well, eventually launching a ready-to-wear line. And we've paired this de la Renta dress from about 1965 with this beautiful burnt orange alpaca hat, which was from the collection of Oreen Muse. Oreen Muse was the original editor of The Register, which was the beginning name of what today we know as In Register magazine here in Baton Rouge, and Miss Muse was known for her hats. This particular hat worn by Miss Muse is a Christian Dior hat, also from the 1960s. Starting in post-war era, Dior introduced what would become known as the New Look in 1947. During wartime, there was a restriction on fabric, and post-war, Dior's look exploded with huge voluminous skirts and dominated fashion throughout the 1950s and into the early 60s. This quintessential flapper dress from about 1924 is very special, with a hand-painted bodice done in beautiful shades of blue, green, and gold, and a velvet skirt that's been gathered into the bodice using a paper bag technique, also featuring a high-low hem that's shorter in the front and a bit lower in the back. This was donated to the collection by Barbara Bako and is quite special in that it has a tag on the inside identifying it as coming from Franklin and Simon department store, which is a very old New York department store established in the 19th century. This Chinese robe, which is from the late 19th, early 20th century, is really a treasure of the collection. It is a representation of a type of embroidery known as shishu, or sometimes shoe embroidery for short, which is an elaborate form of needlework executed in China for centuries, and sometimes referred to as the forbidden stitch, in that it was so prized and done by such expert craftspeople that shoe embroidery was only to be utilized for members of the royal family. The fasteners for the coat are done in a frog closure style with bronze pieces that end the frog closure in order to attach to its corresponding loop. This was donated by a local woman who had traveled in China and purchased this while abroad and then donated it to the collection when she returned in the early 1990s. This section of our exhibition, Color Me Fashion, is an exploration of an analogous color relationship, which are those colors that are adjacent to each other on the color wheel, these being green, blue, and yellow. look on the back, which features a swing quilted coat, is very special to us. It was recently donated to the museum from the North Texas Fashion Collection, who had received this Oscar de la Renta coat from Mercedes Bass, who is a very famous socialite in New York City, who donated over 700 pieces of her wardrobe to the North Texas Fashion Collection, and we were thrilled to receive some of them. We've paired it with a blue silk skirt and blouse ensemble from the 1980s by a designer by the name of Mia, also shown with a 1920s cloche hat. And this strand of pearls is special to the museum, was owned by a local woman named May Baynard, who was one of our original supporters, and we try to incorporate May's pearls into every show that we do. Mixing of analogous colors allows us to bring together these pieces that span 100 years of history. One of the older pieces in this grouping is this unbelievable Edwardian bodice from about 1900, made by the French couturier Jacques Doucet. His label is on the inside of the bodice. The silk bodice is hand embroidered with a wheat pattern and is further embellished with handmade bobbin lace and silk chiffon. It was worn by a woman by the name of Emil Trofizowski, who was an early feminist and writer who wrote many books including World's End and The Quick and the Dead, and we're very pleased to be able to show this as a part of Color Me Fashion. The couture garment juxtaposed with two examples of American ready-to-wear from the middle of the 20th century, around 1950 to 60. The lighter green dress is by an American designer by the name of Anne Fogarty, done in a beautiful green linen. And then the cotton velvet jacket and skirt to the right is by another woman American fashion designer, Adele Simpson. In the middle of the 20th century, many new fashion brands developed here in the United States as fashion shifted from being centered in Paris to New York City, and many of those early designers were women. So we've separated two analogous stories. On one side, green, blue, and yellow, and on the other, red, blue, and purple, with this presentation of paper dresses. In the 1960s, many paper product companies began to manufacture dresses made from paper, done in very vibrant, bright colors and prints like the ones that you see here. The paper was finished in a way that did allow them to be washed a few times, but they're early examples of fast fashion. These paper dresses are done either in a shift or A-line silhouette, which were very wearable and were also very affordable for people to add these brightly colored garments to their wardrobe at the time. We have another example of an analogous color relationship. This time we're exploring red, blue, and purple in a variety of artifacts spanning from the 1980s all the way back to the 1890s. The first gown that we have in this tableau is another example of a couture piece in our collection, this time by the French designer Pierre Balmain, which has this wonderful asymmetrical component to it with the exaggerated cream-colored bodice on the top, juxtaposed with the more form-fitting tubular skirt on the bottom, but separated by this elaborate beadwork, all of which would have been done by hand. We placed it adjacent to this 1920s cloche hat. Cloche is the French word for belle, and hats in the 1920s fit very close to a woman's head, therefore they were called cloches. Right behind the hat is an 1890s beautiful velvet coat. The Gilded Age, or the 1890s, was an extravagant time for fashion, personified in the voluminous silhouette of these leg of mutton sleeves that are so carefully pleated into the arm's eye, with the fabric then also pleated around the neckline to create this dramatic collar. As a transition between our analogous section of red, blue, and purple and going into our last complementary section of purple and yellow, we're featuring this Pucci jumpsuit from the late 1960s, because how can you have an exhibit about color and not talk about Emilio Pucci, the famous Italian designer who became known for vivid color, expressive print work, done in a variety of forms, including this unbelievable pantsuit that comes to us from one of our original charter members, May Baynard, again, one of the original donors to the museum. We've replicated the geometric print that you see in the Pucci jumpsuit here, which is done entirely in silk, in the graphic display that we're doing behind the Pucci jumpsuit as a way to further emphasize the graphic nature of Pucci's print designs from the 1960s. We transitioned from the Pucci piece into our final complementary section, which is very LSU inspired, which is our purple and yellow or purple and gold collection of garments that we're presenting for Color Me Fashion. This section of the exhibition focuses again on a complementary color relationship of purple and yellow. And one of my favorite pieces in the exhibition is this beautiful Dior day dress from about 1978, worn by a local Baton Rouge woman by the name of Winifred Winfrey. The dress was donated by her daughter. It's made from a very delicate silk chiffon that has a silver metallic thread running through the material. It's a perfect complement because of the yellow components of its print, with the Fortuny fabric again in yellow that's behind it. And we transition from the Dior dress into this 1920s picture hat that's done in a yellow plated sisal with beautiful detail work in the very tiny, beautiful floral components that are done in shades of yellow and purple and green. And one of the more vibrant purple pieces in this grouping of objects is this quilted ensemble, which is a top and a skirt from the Finnish brand Marimekko, done in this deep purple, also with floral elements showing in orange and blue. Marimekko is a brand today that still creates very contemporary, modern, easy-to-wear designs. And we've paired it with an oversized glass bead necklace done by the famous fashionista Iris Apfel. The cases in the center of our gallery feature garments that are all pink, exploring monochromatic color as a means of fashion expression. And one of the most interesting pieces in this collection of garments is this beautiful Chanel suit done in shades of pink and white with the achromatic black, paired with a thin Chanel belt and displayed adjacent to these beautiful black patent leather Chanel shoes. We've topped the whole thing off with a wide hat, again done in plated sisal, not by Chanel, but by another French couturier by the name of Yves Saint Laurent. Exploring color and fashion also allows us to investigate certain themes. For this section of the gallery installation, we look at sea glass. Sea glass, which washes up on our beaches, is really Mother Nature upcycling. At the turn of the 20th century, Coca-Cola bottles were a light seafoam green color, and our oceans are full of them. Much of the sea glass that comes up onto our beaches today is in shades of blue and green, and this section of garments is inspired by sea glass, sometimes referred to as mermaid's tears. One of the most special pieces in this section is this Rosalie Macrini gown with this large, exaggerated bow done in silk at the neckline. Not only is the dress beautiful with its layered tiers of chiffon in the skirt, but it's special to Louisiana history as it was worn by Catherine Long, the wife of Russell Long, longtime senator from Louisiana and son of famed Louisiana Governor Huey Long. Color Me Fashion is really an opportunity for us to look at this combination of fabric and silhouette and color as a way to explore joy and to immerse ourselves in the wonder and magic of color and fashion across time.
We've all heard the old phrase, they don't make 'em like they used to, but maybe not used to describe video games. Wisconsin-based musician Jordan Davis feels exactly that way, though. In fact, Davis loved the look, the feel, and the sound of old-school video games so much that he decided to design one of his own, then to name it after his very own band. Space Raft, the game, stars Davis and his bandmates and features notable people and places in the Milwaukee indie rock scene. Importantly, though, Jordan says that Space Raft replicates the style and the interface of video games of old. So, ready, Player One?
Ready? Cool. I started my first band in high school called Mystery Girls from Green Bay. It was a garage rock band. Our first record came out when I was 19 or so. That kind of set me on my way. So I'm mostly a musician. That's kind of my main discipline. When I finally moved to Milwaukee in my 20s, I started a band called Space Raft. So Space Raft is a video game. It's an 8-bit NES game about my indie rock band. And basically it's a kind of adventure where you're following the band around trying to retrieve these stolen master tapes of the new records. Because it was my first video game, I decided to stick to what I know. Basically, every stage in the game is a different venue or establishment here in Milwaukee. Cool. Video games have overtaken every other sort of entertainment media. It's a form of empowerment, I think, when you're giving the player the tools to accomplish tasks and solve problems. That's something that we can all relate to. So I think that there's some sort of self-expression aspect that comes along with interactive media because we all choose to experience it differently. And I think there's something kind of profound about that. I felt a little intimidated by the visual aspect of this project when I got started. I hadn't done any visual art outside of random show posters in probably about 15, 20 years. The first thing that I actually ended up drawing was the front steps of the Cactus Club. I worked at Cactus Club for many years, so it was very much, it also lived down the street, so it was part of my neighborhood. I couldn't drive to the freeway without driving past it, so I was very, very intimate with the location. With tile-based 8-bit artwork, everything is representational. You're not doing one-for-one of anything. You're trying to represent your subject the best so that people interpret it the way that you want it to. And I think I got it pretty close. I think people that are familiar with Cactus Club, that have stood from that side of the street, crossed the street to look at it, will recognize it. Our ex-bass player, Serini, is a dear friend of mine. He volunteered to be the villain of the game. He volunteered the premise that he would have stolen the master tapes in a fit of jealousy, and that we're basically tracking him down, trying to retrieve the tapes and put the record out. So that involves going to shows and cleaning up after our ex-bass player. It's just a lot of antics, I guess you'd call them. I had very little idea of how much demand there would be for a new NES cartridge. It seemed funny to me to make something for outdated hardware. And the more that I kind of researched it, the more I realized that it wasn't irrational, and there's a lot of people out there that are interested in this stuff. I just think that like old technology, record players, cassette players, old game consoles, they all have value the same way that we would write a piece of music for a piano, which was invented in the 1700s. I have friends on every corner of the globe that are currently working with the console. It's really nice to have a sense of community with any creative endeavor that you go into. And game development can be an incredibly solo pursuit. You know, it's a lot of time spent alone with headphones on, poring over details that others may not find interesting. But to be able to relate those experiences to a broader community of developers and players and create this feedback loop, it's really satisfying. Finding connection with people and communicating intentions, I think that's what art is in general. Finding that through games is no less fulfilling than it is through painting or through playing guitar or through doing anything else that you might fill your days with.
And that is that for this edition of Art Rocks. But never mind, because more editions of the show are always available at lpb.org/artrocks. And if you love stories like these, consider Country Roads. The magazine makes a vital guide for learning what's taking shape in Louisiana's cultural life all across the state. Until next week, I've been James Fox Smith, and thank you for watching.
West Baton Rouge Museum is proud to provide local support for this program on LPB, offering diverse exhibitions throughout the year and programs that showcase art, history, music, and more. West Baton Rouge Museum, culture cultivated.
Art Rocks is made possible by the Foundation for Excellence in Louisiana Public Broadcasting and by viewers like you.